Hey everybody, this is me, Brian Von VA, narrating for the greatest Irishman to ever live, MrRipper. We're going to be talking today about the do's and don'ts for new players. So if you are a new player, or you're considering playing D&D, Pathfinder, or any TTRPG for your first time, now is the time to pay attention. That said, if you have any tips, tricks, or do's and don'ts, go ahead and leave them down in the comments below or on our subreddit r/MrRipper. That said, DMs of Reddit, what are your do's and don'ts for new players? Do. Ask your DM what kind of campaign you'll be in. The balance of plot and combat is important and can shift from session to session. Learning the rules of D&D combat and resources and learning the talents of role-playing are two very different things. Both make for a well-rounded player and a better experience at the table. During character creation, make sure to talk with your fellow players. Try to pick different combat and role-playing styles so that your team can tackle many different things both in and out of combat. Try to treat both things like a team effort. Put elements of yourself into your very first character, both your strengths and your weaknesses. The character will be easier to play and have similar approaches to things as you would. Don't make the character a complete copy of yourself because, pick one thing you've always wanted to be, but never got the chance. You get to be not only a hero here, but play out talents, powers, and experiences that you know well enough and wish you had. Dark characters are tougher to play and require acting nuance and character plot growth that new players typically don't have. All worlds need more kinds of good in them, and as a new player, you can be the good your DM's world needs. Pick a theme for your character. Pick a color, a number, pick a monster, pick an item in your inventory. This can become your theme and can help create a unique backstory. Make it a point to share the shine. Whatever shining moments you envision for your characters, keep your fellow players in mind. Support their moments, and they should be there for you too. Finally, the DM needs some spotlight to shine too. A good DM will have to build conflict against your characters, but creates the drama for the sake of you, the players. That's a lot of work, and the world is full of awe and wonder. And the story should always remain bigger than you to struggle and thrive within. Don't try to win the game. Failing and suffering it are part of every hero's journey. Even if your character is a powerhouse, it's good to have a rival or a weakness to struggle with. Some weakness and failures are permanent and help a character feel more realistic, relatable, and even lovable. Try not to get hung up on one element of the game, whether combat, resources, or role-playing. Always seek to grow as a player. Different players at the table have different RP talents, and your DM does too. Ask how they use new RP techniques. Experiment, experience. Try not to copy or step on another player's style unless your characters are intentionally related somehow. Be patient with them, as they are often trying new things too. Don't conflate a character with their player. What a character does at the table does not necessarily reflect what the player is or thinks or feels. This is especially true when another character does not agree with yours. Do not use a character sheet as cover for a personal darkness you wish to act out on or work through. D&D is acting. It's not therapy. Other players do not exist for your glory nor advantage. Do not dominate nor manipulate them. They are here to play with you, not for you. Do not copy a well-known character. If you have multiple inspirations of coolness, mix them instead. Do not be afraid. If you have an idea or inspiration for something to say, do it. Action is the beginning of adventure. Welcome to D&D. Do. Communicate with your DM and fellow players and set up expectations for the campaign and have a session 0 to try and see if you can go with the vibe being laid out. Please make sure to take notes for every session and keep track with them as well. It really helps the DM with all they have to manage. But don't go into any game expecting it to be like Critical Role, Dimension 20, Arcane Arcade, or any other D&D live streams. Yes, those are really cool games by talented players, but going in with the expectations of a grandiose session with professional levels of voice acting that you can only find here from Brian Von VA can often lead to disappointing returns unless the DM and players are willing and able to put that much effort forward. I usually recommend to play a half-caster class as first character to get the grasp of both the martial and spellcasting side of D&D, though not artificer. One of our crew actually wanted to respond to this, so see, I lean in the opposite direction. If you've got a new player at your table, simplify the game for them. I agree. Suggest that they either play fighter or cleric. Fighter will get them involved in fights without a lot of overhead, and cleric is probably the easiest spellcaster to learn since their spell list is granted to them and all they need to do is pick which ones they need each day. Plus, they're less squishy than a wizard, so they can learn to play as a caster while still taking some punishment. And they'll have healing spells at their disposal, so they're always going to provide something positive to the party as a whole, even while they're still learning. I also want to add something to this. Back in the day with Neverwinter, the actual video game, things like that, people would play a cleric rather than a paladin character because clerics technically used to be the original paladin. Everyone always thinks of them as some kind of soft, squishy little priest. These things would walk around with shields and maces and smack the unholy hell out of everything around them while throwing a healing spell every so often. Not quite as tanky as a fighter, but not quite as squishy as a priest should be. If you think you misheard your DM, calmly ask them to repeat what they said in a manner that you understand. This will diffuse a lot of situations before they start, as I have personally learned, and is even recommended for experienced players. Yeah, never be afraid to talk to somebody, because you're going to be playing with them for a long time. Might as well say hi. Do come to the table with roughly 80 to 90% of your character figured out. Leave the remainder for DM creativity and your own exploration as a player. Basically, you can metagame out of character, but do not metagame in character. I think what this person means is that discussing tactics and such out of character is fine, and even acting on those discussions in character is fine. But don't use out of character knowledge to cheese the fight. If your character don't know it, don't include it in your tactical discussion. Please don't be afraid to ask questions. If you need help building a character or want to learn more about the world, just ask. DMs like it when their players ask questions. It means they're actually interested in the game and all the hard work the DM's putting into it. Here's one for DMs. Do help them build their character and give them an introductory session 0 that plays to their character's strengths so they can learn their character's abilities. Do be patient and have a copy of their character sheet to point out things they missed. Ooh, I really like that one a lot. Don't take away player agency in any way, whether it's by charms, mind control spells, or other such effects. Don't ignore body language cues or comments, especially if they hint that the player isn't having fun. Your campaign can actually make or break a new player's D&D passion. Now here's something for new players. Do read up on races, classes, and ability scores. Watching YouTube videos helps a lot. Do ask questions and try to understand the theme of the games the DM tries to run. Don't multi-class until you get the hang of individual class strengths and weaknesses. And don't be afraid to speak up when things are frustrating you or making you uncomfortable. The DM is not your enemy in the game and ideally wants to give you a good time. Please take at least minor notes. The next time you mistake guild symbols and carve Zenthum's symbol instead of Xanathar's and have guards take people giving you the tasks because of it, I won't hint on it even in the slightest. Not really an experienced DM, but please listen to the first time your DM tells you something. It's frustrating when they don't want to be your mom and don't want to have to reprimand you or remind you of the rules. Here's an example. At my table, we take turns. The first rolls we do determine the session's action order for each encounter to streamline the battles and encounters. Proceeds to skip everyone and speak out of turn and generally be dismissive and aggressive. It's not your turn yet. You know that. Why not? Yes, that was me actually facepalming, and yes, I actually believe that the DM here is pretty smart because using a roll in the very beginning to determine the session's action order for the entire session, yes, I love it. Don't open the manuals every time I describe a monster, and then complain when you realize I was expecting that and modified it. In other words, don't be a metagaming asshole. Don't make a character that will not want to go on the adventure. Oh, I hate these characters. We all sat down to play the game, so don't rely on the other players or the DM to come up with a reason for your character to come on the ride. I've always liked to tell players to not look up popular YouTubers, Redditors, etc., unless it's MrRipper, of course, who make videos or threads to optimize builds. Let your first character or two be something you want them to be, with little knowledge from the game and some guidance from the DM. That way, when they get super invested and do look into optimizing or other things, they'll still understand the joy and creativity of going with a meaningful build instead of a mechanical one. Plus, it lets them roleplay more, since they usually have to be a bit more creative with non-optimized builds. I kind of agree here, but I also disagree on not having an optimized build. If their character isn't built correctly, they're not going to be very fun to play. Optimizing isn't power gaming. We optimize our own lives as best as we can to make things easier on ourselves. Why wouldn't our characters? Do try to take advice from your DM. Don't try to make Homebrew for your first game. Do come armed with the idea of what D&D is and what you're getting yourself into. Try and learn what your character can do. Working with your DM closely when making them actually helps. Pay attention to what you're rolling, when, and the math behind it. Pay attention to the story and game, and ask plenty of questions. But don't skip a session or zone out constantly, unless you obviously have to skip a session, duh. Ignore the story or refuse to engage/interact with it, the NPCs and the players. Play a character far beyond your scope. I recommend at most a backstory interesting enough to get into, but still focus on the mechanics with your first character. Expect someone else to deal with all the mechanics, math, and features at your disposal. I don't expect you to get it instantly, but I expect you to try. Refuse to try something your DM asks you to. Within reason, of course, because they're here to help. For new players, don't fall prey to the main character syndrome. I know it can be hard at times, especially for new players, but keep in mind that there are many at the table and it's everyone's story. And have fun with everyone, not just your character. Here are some suggestions I give them when I'm trying to get people into the hobby with a one-shot. If two new players join, I motivate them to make their characters as if they have known each other for a while. I also encourage them to make talkative or fun-loving characters. A character that doesn't talk won't enjoy anything outside of combat. Half-casters are amazing for newbies. Want to use a bow? Ranger. If you want to go sword and shield or big axe, Paladin can do both. If you don't like the character, tell me. We can work on it or work a new one into the story. This one is the most important though. Enjoy the game and be awesome. Optimization is okay. Be creative, fun, and give it all some flair. As a good example, my monk, the one I usually have for one-shots, is built like something from Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. Twice in his attacks, he sends the enemy flying through the air with his combos. Hey everyone, Brian Von VA here, back at it again, checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, to subscribe, and to ring that bell. Yes, go ahead. I'm waiting. Go ahead. You want the positivity at the end, right? You can't just skip ahead. Well, you could, but I know you're cheating. Skip ahead and I will cry. So like, subscribe, and ring the bell. That said, make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below. I want to see what all of you think should be a do and a don't for not only new players, but in my opinion, for new DMs as well. Now, if you want to follow me, Brian Von VA, you can do so over here at brianvonva.com. All of my social medias are on the bottom, but I would recommend coming out to say hi on Twitch. That's where I am most of the time, for now. That said, I try to end things on a positive note, and today I don't actually... I want to change it up a little bit. I want to change it up. I want to change it up by giving you guys and gals not so much a positive thing, but a do. Because this is the theme of the video. So here's something that I suggest everyone do. And granted, I'm not a wizard of D&D or Pathfinder or anything. I love it, but I haven't played a lot of it. But one thing I did back in the day when I did roleplay a lot with a lot of different platforms was I kept notes. Now, of course, that's been said 1,000 times, but let me give you a little like idea, especially if you have like ADHD or you want a lot of like, you have a hard time paying attention, you want a lot of colors or something. Here's 2 options. 1, get note cards. Get a lot of note cards that are pretty and cute that you can design and doodle on and write down all of your major, minor skills, things like that. Write down like a stat block for your character. Have it easy and put it on like a little like wheel or a ring that you can sort through. Something that's in permanent order. That way you can often check it, often look through things and have them like color coded. You could even do it with sticky notes in a note binder. Things like that can make a game a hell of a lot more fun for someone who loves to be organized or just has no real attention span or has problems focusing. You want to be able to make your character your own and make notes actually fun. This is stuff that you learned in grade school. This is what I learned in grade school that helped me keep ahead of the curve. So I hope it helps somebody else out there too. All the love, please be safe, be happy, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.